Here. Here. I want to thank everyone who showed up, even though you're not here, but you're probably watching on YouTube. Everyone who showed up to discuss cell phones in our schools and our high school students for sharing their wisdom with us tonight. Hi. Hi.
Great. So typically about a week before we come and join you all, I start jotting down notes, and I was like, I have 2 things on my list, and now I have 7 things on my list. So I will keep it brief. But the main thing tonight was for you all to get an opportunity to meet the amazing Jackie Carroll. Jackie has worked for CMC Salida for the past 2+ years as our enrollment services coordinator. When Carrie Vignale stepped out of her role as a concurrent enrollment coordinator a few months ago, we went through a search process and have hired Jackie into that role. She is doing an exceptional job, and I have heard that consistently from our friends, the counselors over there, and Jesse and Abigail, and most importantly, students. So I just wanted you all to get a chance to get to know her a little bit and hear about her background, and so you can tell them whatever you want to.
Awesome. Hi. I'm kind of newer to the area. My husband and I bought a plot in Coaldale in October of 2021 and just recently finished building our house this past July. And now we've got our first baby on the way, and it's due end of March. So that's real exciting. I really love it here. I love working for CMC, and I was really excited to take this particular position because I love working more closely with the students. Our traditional students that are not SEPA students tend to interact a lot more via email. They don't need as much from me. I like kind of helping the students figure out their pathways and what they're interested in and delving into what the possibilities are with CMC. I have a bachelor's of science in human biology, and I'm working on an MBA through CSU Global right now, so that's fun too. And
You love pets.
I do have a lot of pets. Yeah, we've got a little homestead going. We've got goats and chickens and dogs and cats. And yeah, we absolutely love settling into our lives here. We feel really lucky to be here. And yeah, very excited for this journey. This was got through my first semester in this position. It was definitely chaotic, but nothing too crazy. And I'm excited to kind of get it more streamlined and get to know the students. Trying to remember student names right now is very hard for me, but I'm really trying hard, and I'm hoping I've been told the pregnancy braid never actually goes away, but I'm optimistic, so we'll see. But yeah, it's very nice to meet all of you, and I encourage you to, if you're around CMC, please feel free to chat with me, and I would love to get to know you.
Jackie's office is at the high school, so she's there 4 days a week, either 8 to noon or noon to 5. Her office is right across from Mary and Dawn, and so one of the things that this transition afforded us is an opportunity to sort of hit the pause button and make sure that we were really clear about what the purpose and focus of her role was. And so I just want to read you one thing that we kind of collectively put together. And I won't go through all of these bullets, but I think it was a helpful exercise for me in conversation with Jesse and Abigail and the counselors. And this is number one. It says the first priority is to provide exceptional academic advising and counsel for students. This should be a given, but I think at times it's gotten lost in the details of meetings, committee assignments, emails, etc. Every student at Salida High School should know who you are and see you as a resource for information and guidance on career pathways, both those that include Colorado Mountain College as a postgraduate option and those that are headed elsewhere. So hopefully that gives you all a sense of the number one priority for Jackie and her role over the high school. So anything else? Any questions you all want to ask Jackie before we transition to other stuff? Great. I want to give a brief Ascent update, and then I want to share a quick story about a student. So I think most of you know that the criteria by the state is sort of an ever-moving target. They fixed the number at the number that we have this year. So right now we're looking at 7 or 8 students next year. David recently committed to funding 10. I have that in writing. Jesse has it in writing. So if he walks that back, we'll make sure to revisit that with him. I want to share a story about an individual student that, and I might get teary when I share this story, but a student that 2 years ago we funded to go take Colorado history class through CMC Leadville in the summer. That class was grant funded. I believe it was the first college course that this individual took. This is an individual from a pretty impoverished background that there was like zero chance that this student was on a college pathway. Came back from that experience, had a really positive experience, took a couple of more college classes so that they were Ascent eligible. With a ton of support from our colleagues in the SWAP office, which is in our building. That individual is now up at the CMC Steamboat campus this fall. I got word last week that they received a 3.6 GPA this semester. And I mean, again, like this is a gigantic win for us as a community. When I think about what the purpose of Ascent is, and the target student, like this is the target student. The fact that this individual went to a residential campus a long ways from his home, required a ton of financial resources and just support systems and network. Like every single person in our office knows this student. Like everyone has been involved in some way in helping get them across the finish line. And so that's been a huge win for us with Ascent. And that's one student this year. So anyways, if you want to ask me more about that, I'd love to share more about that. One of the big successes this year, and I think Jesse and Abigail and hopefully the counselors would agree, if you all remember the past couple of years, CMC has helped write this grant for the school district, the Concurrent Enrollment Expansion and Innovation Grant. It's the grant that paid for Josh Bechtel to get his graduate degree, which is why he's able to now teach classes like calculus and college trig and stats at the college level. When we were looking at that grant last year, we knew that there were 2 teachers in the pipeline, Brady Hines and Luke Waltney. And so we knew that if we got it, there was going to be some extra money left in that funding. So we pitched a pretty crazy idea at that time to create 3 new stipend positions. The first was around supporting Ascent students. The second was around supporting work-based learning credentials. And the third was to work directly with Fred Maxwell on a 4-year work-based learning curriculum at the high school. We hired Abigail Cooksey with one of those stipends to work on industry-recognized credentials. We hired Paul Brockman to work on Ascent support, and then we hired Josh Bechtel to work with Fred Maxwell on 4-year work-based learning curriculum. All 3 of those individuals have absolutely hit grand slams, in my opinion. Like the return on investment from those 3 $8,000 stipends has far and away exceeded what we have spent. Cooksey, can you remind me what the number of CDIP certs was last year and when it's going to be this year? Is 50 the number that we're anticipating this year?
Yeah, we're anticipating about 56 cents, which pay out about $800 per student to our school district.
And we had 11 last year?
And last year we had 11.
Yeah, so I could probably spend the whole evening talking about the success of those 3 stipends, but I've just been really pleased with getting to work with those 3 individuals and the work that they've done. New courses that are just for the first semester happening this semester. Art Appreciation is a new course, Interpersonal Comms a new course, U.S. History since the Civil War is a new class, Intro to Sociology, Ensemble, and Audition Choir. So that's 6 brand new college courses this semester alone. Art Appreciation, Interpersonal Comm, U.S. History, and Intro to Soc are all guaranteed transfer courses. So that means if a student is attending any in-state institution, those are part of their general ed transferable requirements. Couple of fun anecdotal stories. Had a meeting with a student last week that graduated from Salida High School last spring that's currently at Montana State in Bozeman. We were just hanging out, catching up, and at the end of our conversation, I said, hey, what happened with your transfer credits? And if some of you have been around long enough to remember this, some of you haven't, but 3 years ago, there was all this discussion around how do transfer credits work for students, and do CMC credits actually mean anything in the real world, and are they going to transfer? And there was this whole AP conversation versus concurrent enrollment, blah, blah, blah. Student said, Montana State accepted all 40 of my transfer credits. I started day 1 of my freshman year as a sophomore. So that's student number 1, again, out-of-state institution. Texted another student today that's at Arizona State because I had heard through the grapevine that Arizona State may or may not be accepting transfer credits. I'm going to pull up the email and read it to you, or the text that I got back from the student, and read it to you if I can find it. I can't find it. There it is. ASU took all of my credits. I'm set up as a sophomore right now, and I'm planning on graduating in 2027 because of it. So that's 2 students, both attending different out-of-state public institutions, and both of them accepted all of their college transfer credits. That's about it. What else do y'all want to know? Gave you a 1-pager. That's something that we put together for our strategic planning retreat with our team at the end of every academic year. So that's a few months old now, but that'll give you kind of a snapshot of what CMC is up to. That includes lots of data points around concurrent enrollment, but the larger conversation around what else is happening with CMC.
And one of my questions that I mentioned to David the other day is now that we have the pathways, and there's a lot of courses listed on there, these are the courses you should take, are we going to be able to be offering all of those courses on the different pathways continuously?
Not next year, but I think we're pretty conscious of courses in each of those pathways and trying to actively work towards adding those.
So you will be able to at least take something from the pathway probably every semester. I mean,
like if you pulled out the pathway document right now, I would bet that probably half of the courses on there are currently being offered. There's some more like nuanced specialized courses that we're just going to have to find adjunct faculty or credentialed teachers at Salida High School over the course of the next couple of years to build those out.
And are most of those at Kesner or at the high school? Or does it depend?
Probably half and half.
Yeah, I was going to say about half and half.
And then some online options as well. We have some students taking online courses to fit better into their schedule, especially if they're trying to finish with an associate's or something like that.
Jody, you had a question yesterday, kind of looking at the current number of concurrent enrollment students and whether it's, I think the way you articulated, was there a lot of students taking a lot of courses or a few students taking a lot? So we had 208 discrete students taking concurrent enrollment classes, at least one course in the fall. Typically that drops off significantly in the spring. We have 210 this semester. 1,101 credits, which according to my back of the napkin math equals out to 5.29 credits per student. So that means most students are taking around 2 college courses. You're going to have a few that are taking like one credit auto or construction, or 2 credit auto construction course, and then others that are taking 9, 10, 12 credits.
And Jesse was able to share with me freshman 5%, and that it steadily increases exponentially, actually, for the seniors. So it's exactly what you want.
Yeah, I probably could have said it earlier, but in the student section conversations, we talked about the block schedule a little and the AB schedule, and very excited, at least at my table, of like how much better that works with CMC in the classes that they would take through the pathways and concurrent enrollment and everything else. So I think that move as it's kind of forthcoming is beneficial. So from a bigger picture CMC thing, and you may not be able to tell me yet, but have we found a Salida board member? Or is
We
it not
have
public
found a
yet?
Salida board member, and I apologize that we haven't issued apparently a press release yet.
I may have missed it.
Beth Helmke is the new board of trustee representative for the southern section of CMC. Many of you know Beth as the deputy director for Chaffee County. And she is, as we speak, going through her first day of CMC Board of Trustee training, and I believe today is her first day on the job as a CMC Board of Trustee. I'd encourage you to get to know Beth. If you don't know her, she is a fantastic addition. She came and met with our staff team last week, and yeah, I think it's going to be exceptional in that role. I'm glad you asked that. Thank
I
you.
heard that rumor, so you
Okay.
confirmed it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
What else?
You guys excited about your new home, permanent?
We are excited about our new home. Yes. The lift has been working for more than a month now. That's a bonus. Yeah, the lift has been sporadic.
Awesome. Well,
Okay.
thank you for being here tonight. And
Yeah.
Not sure if you're sticking around through Jesse's presentation, but
I think
if
we're
you're
good.
leaving, appreciate you guys.
Did I
Well,
steal
I mean,
any
I
of your
think one
stuff,
more-
Jesse?
One more thing that I'll just say to you, Rob,
Yeah.
is that all the students tonight, we're talking about what's going well at the high school, like CMC and the opportunities that they feel like they're getting through CMC was the main thing they kept saying over and over again. I mean, they're amazing teachers, and then all of our opportunities through CMC. So definitely the students feel really pleased with what you guys are doing.
And you in particular, your name was strongly mentioned. And truly, the words I believe were, "This is the best thing that could have happened to Salida High School."
Cool.
So,
Yeah, they actually said that at my table. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
Big fans.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Appreciate getting to spend time with you. Please feel free to pick up the phone anytime if you ever have questions. I'm always happy to do some digging if you need to dig down into the data weeds, so to speak.
Thank you for being
All right.
here.
Peace out,
Appreciate it.
friends. Thanks for the pizza.
Yeah.
Take more.
Take
Yes,
more.
Thank you. That
I'm
was
sure there's
fantastic.
plenty. Campus reports. We jumping straight into Jesse?
I think it should go over our head.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, before I go into the presentation, I think just reflecting back on my 3 years here and watching board members talk to students. How do I put this? It's a distinct pleasure with you as a board. I've been in this game for a long time now, since the 90s, and have worked with various boards over the years. And Salida High School, when I came here, was a great school with areas to grow in, which we are continuing to grow in those areas. But I think it's important to recognize a lot of the work that we have done at the high school, we needed board support. And we truly appreciate your support. Um, there's been a lot of growing pains over the last 3 years, and we're starting to see results. Right? I told the staff that I was super excited to come in front of the board and talk about the great things we've done over the last few years and how we've grown and where we're going to continue to grow. But I truly mean it when I say it's really hard to do this work, and if you don't have board support, it's even harder to do that work. So we truly appreciate what you've done to support us. So thank you. Um, so with that, some of the stuff I want to brag about, maybe. It's a blank slate. Oh, there we go. You gotcha. Mission. This hasn't changed over the last years. We take care of kids at the high school, socially, emotionally, by providing quality academics, college and career prep, durable skills, and belonging. If you look at those things at the bottom, those are the things that we do in advisory. That's where we focus. Advisory. Advisory driven. Are we there yet? No, we're getting close. As you talk to students, we heard some inconsistency in what advisory is like depending on their advisor. But we're continuing to grow. We talk about this mission all the time at the high school. Love that. Go back for a second, Cooksey. That picture of Ollie under physically, that's soccer when they won. They were runner up. I don't know why he had the trophy, but it's a cool picture. Vision. You'll hear David say this a lot. I say it a lot also. We need to know every student by name, need, and strength. And also every student can verbalize and articulate a post-secondary pathway. The goal was 75% of kids, if you asked them what their pathway is, they could tell you. We're there. We've achieved that. Or kidding, hopefully they could tell. I'll go back for a second too. I just want to. There's our fearless leader at Career Day, interviewing kids, some artwork, and our great state championship cross country team. Mandy, that looks like Monument Valley Park. Is it? Yeah. Successes. I'll talk a little bit about the first one I am super proud of. The goal was to reach 60% matriculation this year, which means it would have grown by 12% from last year. We knocked it out of the water. 70%. 70% of our kids are going on to a post-secondary program, grown from 48% a year ago. So that is awesome. We have advisors working with kids on individual plans. Pathways are published. SAT, PSAT, this hasn't changed. Coverage for how long? Long time. Concurrent enrollment, you heard. credits, saving families over $500,000. Athletics activities, cross country state champions this year, the boys. Soccer runners up. The Adams family was an incredible hit. We've created esports. They're in a pilot mode right now for the next 3 years, an esports team, which is CHASA recognized. We know about this SEL framework, a counseling center with 2 counselors, a Sol Vista social worker, Jackie Carroll from CMC, and Jessica Bennett, school psychologist, all in one place to support kids. So just a few of the great successes we've had. Go ahead, Cooksey.
I was too excited about the successes.
Goals. Every year, like anybody, we write down a bunch of goals. These goals are written on my whiteboard. They're in the action plan that we share with staff and develop with the building leadership team. At the beginning of the year, we had a retreat with CMC and the leadership team from the high school. And I remember David sliding a piece of paper to me, a scrap piece of paper, and saying, "These are the must things we must have." And I looked at the list and I was like, how in the world are we going to achieve all these things? Halfway through the school year, we've accomplished almost all of them. Right? In progress, we're working on it. SHS is advisory driven. We're getting there. It's been an arduous process. And getting everybody on board and rowing in the right direction has been a challenge. But super proud of the improvement we've had there. And 90% of courses have a clearly defined scope and sequence. I think we're close to that also. Individual academic plans. Did any students share those with board members today? No? Well, each student should have an individual academic 4-year plan where they've identified their career pathway. Advisors are working with kids individually. They should be meeting with them on a quarterly basis, and what they go through is what their courses will look like for the next 4 years according to their career pathway. First Tuesdays, where we present career pathways for students that are interested in those career pathways, support this. The master schedule is based on student requests and needs for students that need these courses in their career pathway. A work in progress, but those are the conversations advisors are having with kids right now. Career pathways. Talked a little bit about this in a prior board meeting, I think October, November. We have 7 clearly defined pathways with a number of recommended courses and required courses. Each student should pick one of these pathways that's of interest to them. Does that mean necessarily they have to stay in that pathway the whole 4 years? No, they can move from pathway to pathway. But this is the first year I hear students using this vernacular, right? They know what a career pathway is. A lot of them know what interests them, and I think we'll continue to build on this. Goals for advisory. 4 buckets: college career readiness, belonging, durable skills, and academic support. So career readiness, this is where they're talking about their individual pathways. On Thursdays, belonging, we have club day where each teacher has a club. Clubs are anything from Jody Damas makes crepes, right? Where, yeah,
I get crepes all the time now.
that's awesome. There's a reading club. Dr. Brackman does a World War II film club. They're all over the board with that for kids that are interested in a certain thing. Durable skills, that's our social emotional learning curriculum through Wayfinder, where they do a Wayfinder lesson plan each week. Academic support, we use Naviance for that, and also individual academic counseling within advisory. So advisory serves many different purposes. Next year, when we change the schedule, another piece of advisory will be students being able to go to other teachers to get extra support on classes they may have missed because they were sick or because they missed a class because of a sport. So that's one of the reasons behind extending advisory another 10 minutes. With all the stuff that we need to do in advisory, it makes sense for us to extend it another 10 minutes. The challenge, and I'm just being quite frank with you, is getting every single staff member on the same page and to be an effective advisor, right? When you've been doing things for a long time as a teacher, sometimes it's hard to change, especially if it's outside of your content area. So really giving those advisors that need support the support to move them along to become a better advisor. Is that it? Yeah, that's right. Block schedule. I had a few questions from board members on the block schedule. We put a big document together on the rationale of why we're changing from a 4x4 to an alternating block. I think one of them, well, there's a couple really big benefits to the alternating block. One is they have math and English all year as opposed to a semester. It's very concerning that we have kids in our building that take a math course and then do not take another math course for an entire year, right? And when they have that gap, also they're testing for College Board, right? So have lost a lot of skills. We have some data that we dug into on that really showed the gaps that kids have when they missed math or language arts for a period of time. Also, the alternating block enables us to create more opportunities for kids in registration. It matches up with CMC's schedule, also where a kid could take, a CMC class on Monday and Wednesday, and then that block on Tuesday and Thursday, they can take another CMC class or a high school class, as opposed to having an open hour, which is what they have now. Teachers will have kids the entire year. I think that's going to improve relationships. Also, kids have more time to get through the content. So we're super excited about it. Another piece of this is the block will be reduced to 90 minutes from 100 minutes. 100 minutes is too long for kids, especially freshmen, right? Sitting in an Algebra 1 class. It doesn't matter how much you break up the class, it's still 100 minutes of algebra, which is a long time. 90 minutes is more workable for kids and I think teachers. Any questions on the block schedule before I move on? Well, I guess I should talk about challenges too. It's going to be an adjustment period as far as planning for teachers, as far as pacing for kids. We're going to have to do some professional development with that. Longer time between class meetings. You know, a kid misses a class on Monday, he's only going to have that class once that week on a Wednesday. So that's kind of a challenge. All right. Questions? Yeah, Jody.
Jesse, with regard to the adjustment period, well, first let me say I've read what was put together by the team that made that choice, recommendation, and it was fascinating, and it was so informative, and it was complete, and so it was really, really helpful. A lot of some of the scheduling problems and scoring test scores and stuff like that are on the back of this modified block. How long will that adjustment period be, do you think, before you see some of the hopes realized?
You know, I'm just talking from experience.
Yeah.
When I worked in Manitou, we
Mhm.
did the same thing. We were on a 4x4
really?
block,
Okay.
and we moved to this exact schedule, an AB block. The first year was definitely an adjustment period for the teachers and the kids. I would say more for the teachers than the kids, as far as pacing and workload. And one of the things that we screwed up in was not providing professional development for the teachers, right? And being deliberate and talking through what it looks like now. Students have 8 classes as opposed to 4 classes, and they have twice the time. Teachers giving students the appropriate workload. You know, as far as like scores, we saw a bounce in scores the following year. So
Okay, I gotta be patient.
any other questions on schedule? Data. Athletics activities. Participation is through the roof. I like that feedback that I heard from your group, Matt, about almost too many kids in certain activities, right? And maybe it's time to expand, which needs to be very deliberate, right? And we've been working through a policy on how we add sports, right? That makes sense. But we have incredible participation within our events. So
And Jesse, I wanted to
Yes.
share what one of our students said also.
yes.
They said no more sports or activities because they're already spread too thin. That, right? And
Well,
that it's a small school.
Totally.
Some are in 4 sports. And if more is offered, it's going to be those same students being
Absolutely.
spread even thinner. So I hear what your student was saying, but on the flip side,
Yeah.
we heard
And the challenge is cannibalizing the sports that you do have,
so.
right? Which I've seen happen in small schools before, and we don't want to go down that road. But I think it's important to look at students that are, for lack of a better term, disenfranchised right now, and how do we hook those kids that are not involved in anything. So, like right now, I'm super excited about esports, which I can't believe I'm saying, right? I had to change my thinking a little bit about gaming being an actual sport, but it is, right? And and there's a population of students that are super excited about that, and they're not involved in anything else. Now they're in Mr. Long's class after school, duking it out on Mario Kart, right? And participating in something. So it's great.
As long as we get mountain biking chassa.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
But I have two separate students who specifically kept their grades up for a semester so they could. And I think that's
They're our only sport where we have like BB kids on our team.
Tennis. Tennis, that's right.
which was a concern that was expressed because they're already at 40 kids and allowing BV kids to come.
Well, and that's what I was curious too, because your numbers were super
Uh-huh.
high. Like, how many of those kids are out of our district that are participating in our programs?
There's 40 kids in district, to be clear, on the tennis team already,
Oh, okay.
according to the girls. Yeah.
I think that those are the only two, Mandy.
That's it.
Let me think about that for a
Tennis is
second.
Where can I find
Is
tennis?
golf?
Tennis on the market?
Where's tennis?
all of the sports.
Yeah, this is just.
Let's look at this year's data.
Oh,
these sports
okay.
That haven't happened yet are listed.
Got it.
Swim does, yeah. And golf.
Does, if you get more granularity with this data, like, are the 36 drama students also all in choir and coaching band?
There's some overlap there.
Yeah, I mean, I know
Joe,
there's overlap,
yeah,
just like,
yeah.
we see the numbers, but obviously growing, it's just.
Yep.
Like percentage of participation and how many of them are 2 or 3 or 4 versus 1.
Mhm.
Just- we would just see a little bit.
Yeah, we could drill down into that data for sure. If you look at, well, that's winter and fall for sports. So, Jody? Mhm. So from my limited knowledge, and you're asking me about esports, so I'm definitely not an expert. I can barely focus, but from my understanding, there's the way it works is there's 2 games that they pick each year for a season. So it's Mario Kart and
I want to say Smash Bros.
Smash Bros.
Yeah, that's this year's.
Right? And it's like 2 divisions. So I would compare it to like freestyle swimming and the butterfly. Like there's some folks that are, yeah. And they game against other teams, right? So there's a team score and then there's individual scores. Yeah. We do not. Yeah. Unified goal. Yeah. What else about athletics activities? We just had an offer for mock trial, a proposal for mock trial, but it's one of those things, right? Do we offer it because those kids are already involved in 18 other things? Do we have the capacity for it? It's a great activity, but do we have the capacity? AP tests. Here's some of the data. Number of 5s up there, which is 5's the top score you can get on an AP test. The one outlier is language usage. And that data right there is not great, and that's because we had 3 teachers last year for female. But the other scores are quite exceptional. PSAT, SAT data, again, above state and national average. It's been like that for a long time. We consistently perform higher. This is the focus, right? This is the thorn in our side. Our growth is low. We took a different approach this year. I'm looking forward to seeing what our scores are like in the spring. Each department is being very deliberate about practicing for PSAT and SAT. With time devoted within the classes to practice PSAT and SAT test questions, or work on clean evidence reasoning and science. English is working on a program, computer program called Quill, which has practice SAT questions. So we're doing a number of things where teachers are being very deliberate about practicing for the PSAT and SAT. I think that has been one of the issues, is we've always recognized that we're above the state average, we're good, right? We don't need to focus on it, right? So it's never really talked about or addressed. This year, we're being more deliberate about focusing on, all right, how can our kids do well on these skills and practice for this test? So we'll see. And matriculation. I can tell you when this came out on December 20th, it was a great Christmas present. We knocked it out of the park. Our goal was 60%, it was 70%. And the thing that's even more exciting is the gender gap has closed, right? Boys are matriculating as much as girls now. And the socioeconomic gap is closing also. Right. Jody, you brought up a great question that I did not see in the data, which we're drilling down into, is why are our kids, 50% of our kids going out of state? And, Louis was brought up. I don't know if that's the case, but we're going to drill down into that data. Yeah.
That's different than previous, right? Didn't
Yeah.
most of our kids used to stay in state?
Yeah, I think it's like a 10% difference from last
So
year.
that was just the last year students who graduated, 50% of them went out of state?
Yeah. Or it's like an outlier. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Exactly. It may not be a bad thing. And especially if, like Rob said, they're taking all the credits too. Yeah.
Is there a reason that would be a bad thing that I just don't know? Yeah. For college, right?
There's nothing bad or good about it. It's just it's a brand new piece of it's a change in our student body, and so we want to make sure that we've thought through and understand the implications of, are we really supporting the kids? That's why it's great to hear that they're accepting what we've already designed, because if that wasn't working, then we'd be like, oh no, we're out of sync with what our students want. So I think there's just going to have to be some investigation to make sure there's no unintended consequences of what we're trying to do to support kids actually yields what we intend. So right now it is, but I think it's worth asking more questions and see if that change is a one-off or if that change is something that's really going there. Because I think it'll help us understand how to keep on improving our support of the kids.
There are some additional financial burdens including upon either paying gas or paying tickets or if you break your arm, you send you to school and how do you navigate all of that. So, those are just some of the ideas I have.
So some could just be a cultural difference in our town, and our town is changing, and maybe more people coming from other states and other cities maybe want their kids or encourage their kids to go a little further afield. Yeah.
Whether they were born and raised here or
Yeah. Well, it's amazing if our system can support them no matter where they go.
You know, the thing I worry about with out of state kids too is when you talk to seniors, a lot of times they don't think about price tag, right? And student loans, right? And going out of state and busting the bank and then realizing, wow, I could have went to a CSU or Fort Lewis for 25% of the price I just paid. So I think that's important when we have conversations in advisory to talk about things like student loans and college debt. It is. Not on a consistent basis, though. That's what we're trying to do. Yeah. So that's all I have.
There's one more slide.
Oh,
Really important. The most important slide.
there is. Oh yeah, go Spartans! Hi, Jeff. I'd say we're close. Yeah. And you know why I say we're close to 90% is some folks have a scope and sequence, but it needs work. Yes. Right, right. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, my question piggybacks on that because you mentioned with changing the schedule. So I would imagine that will change their scope and sequence in some way, or no, it would just
No,
be
shouldn't.
that maybe
It's
just
just
stretching
extended
it out.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned, giving
Because it's the same-
wrong amount of workload to a student in the beginning initially, so that would maybe be kind of the professional development piece is making sure they're knowing how to stretch it out appropriately.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It would be the same scope and sequence, but as far as recognizing workload
And timing.
and timing, yeah. Because you know it's not like you're going to assign work for a kid every single day because you're only going to meet them twice a week. So that definitely needs to be deliberate.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate you getting those kids here earlier and
Absolutely.
all the good things they said are attributed to you and your team. So appreciate all you guys do for us. Nobody else from campus reports except Evelyn is here. I feel like we should just have to ask Evelyn a question, but I got nothing for her. So.
Well, I think first we should say thanks to Evelyn from the appreciation kind of committee, which sometimes is Evelyn. And
Full committee of one.
and the food was amazing. Thanks for taking care of us tonight.
Yes, thank you.
So one add to my report, I know that William sent it all to you. So a couple of things, starting February is the bus month. For the drivers, trying to hype it up. And the reason I'm doing that this year, we're short. We're gonna be short on drivers. I need to hype up as many as I can. And then I just go on the numbers. That sports teams are going up. You're talking 45, 50 kids, you're talking 2 buses for the same traffic. So not only am I gonna need more buses, I'm gonna need drivers to drive them. So that's adding to my report. I know I put in for you got it in your report, so I'll say it? Yes. Okay. Aaron's been talking. That's his job. The other thing on my report that I'm adding, staff appreciation, because I hate to see when nobody gets recognized. That is it just hurts me. So next month for the bus driver, I'm doing for the driver, one of my new drivers, we put together a slideshow, and it's just going to be bus driver. So the next board meeting, you're going to have it's not even a clip. Come March, I'm going to highlight all the rest of the classified staff. So we're going to go around and take pictures of Carol and kitchen help, and secretary, including your secretary, and all the people out there, and custodial, doing their jobs, so that you guys will actually see them doing their jobs. So we're going to highlight them in March. And then April, we'll start the rest of the staff appreciation, where I'll start figuring out building by building. So other than that, that's about it. Did you have any other questions? You have anything? I mean, February's next month. That's my big month. So now I'm focusing on February. So if you guys want to bring anything to the drivers during February, any day is fine, because I'm going to try to make every day something special for the drivers. Okay? So just contact me. Any questions? No? All right, then Aaron can do the money. Uh-huh.
It's not a bus.
Oh, the new fleet vehicle? No, it's a new small vehicle. It's not a small, I'm not buying no Barbie. Those things are like $80,000. I'm just buying another Suburban. We have a call for a Suburban. And you got to consider last time I bought Suburban, so the Toyota and Suburban 4 are both 2011. When I took this over, Suburbans were just handed out for whatever, and they're just totally thrown out. Our vehicles stay nice. I have restricted rules. The way you take a vehicle out for cleaning to take care of it, I don't want my vehicle scratched. And the mileage is kept down, because I don't want to just go whatever. You know, you have to go through series of tests and obviously it's so long. But with that said, the Toyota's starting to get up to 100,000 miles. So the Ford is at 155,000 miles, I think, close to it. And Suburban 1, which was the 2016 that we bought, is running almost 111,000 miles. So they're starting to get up there. I'm not going to buy a new Suburban or a new vehicle, because you're looking anywhere from $70,000 to $80,000, and I'm not going to. So I do a lot of search, and I found one down in Pueblo, and it's a Ford
Expedition.
Expedition. Yeah, it's a Ford Expedition, and it's got everything. It's got everything. It's got the big screen. It's got the maps. It's got everything that normal what you would buy now. And I can get that one instead of paying $80,000. It's got 40,000 miles on it. I can get it for $50. So yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't listen to the hype. So no one wants $5. This is what I have. This is what I want to do. I got that one. I was gonna get two, but the funding's not there, so next year I'll buy smaller people like the Toyota. Everybody's driving the Toyota. So I'll buy something. Right now I'm worried about teams golf is coming up. That's my big thing. And they take the golf and, my biggest worry I have not looked at. I mean, it's good. So he's doing really good. And I cool, so he has everything that he needs. As you can tell by my budget. Excellent. So yeah, okay. Have a good night. I'm glad you guys enjoyed your dinner.
Yes. Thanks, Evelyn.
You're welcome.
Hold it down.
Oh, just hold it.
Hi, thank you.
District reports. Dr. Blackburn.
I don't think. I think you've got lots of great information. I will pass two directions. This is the only feedback we have from the phone policy that was talked about tonight. Some people, it's out there for public review, so I'll send it both ways. There's not a lot there. It's supportive of where you guys are intending to go, but I thought I'd print that off. That'll be out there for another month, and we'll bring that back to you next month. So, but that's what's out there, and there's no other feedback from anything else that we've been allowed for public comments. I don't think there's anything else you need from me unless you have questions.
Three responses.
Yes.
Staff.
There's
We
three
do,
responses.
Was it over break?
We also have a petition that was started online
Okay.
for banning cell phones next year. Unfortunately, it doesn't say how many people,
It's a lot.
but when I looked this afternoon online, I think it said like 130.
Okay.
So just another sort of indication, all for banning next. Yeah. So just another indication that the community themselves mobilized, did this petition, and wants us to go phone free. So
It's great. That's
Yeah.
awesome. If you know whoever's floating that petition out there, it'd be great to know who they are and how we would get access to the petition so that.
They were at my
they
table.
were here tonight. So
Oh.
it was actually Susie Hines started it.
Okay.
So she was here tonight. Actually, several of the people's names that I see on here were here tonight.
Makes sense.
If you just go change.org, Salida cell phones, you can find it.
Okay.
But we can pass this around in a second too. I just was reading the names.
That's fabulous.
Okay.
So initially, the way the petition was listed, it had me as the decision maker, and it was like lobby Mandy,
Poundy
and none
face.
of the rest of you. And then it said that there was no response from me. So right,
But they fixed
But they
it when
did
it was
fix
pointed
it,
out to them.
and they took that off and realized that I didn't need to be singled out on the petition. I don't think I'll sign this petition because it's very particular. Like it specifically says that they want the cell phones in the bags and the pockets. So it is a little specific. I mean, I think it's good. Like it's good support, but I mean, I think for me as a board member, I'm not going to sign it because I don't know. It was asking for very specific policy that we haven't yet been able to finalize with our admin team, if
And-
that's what we're doing.
I will say, for what it's worth, some of the people involved in this were at my table and said, "Oh, well, I really thought it needed to be done this way, but now that we've spoken and I've heard from people, I realize that maybe the way you're thinking would be just fine. So I don't know that they were that rigid ultimately, but that's how it looks when you sign your name.
It was good. It was good.
Well, that's
stuff.
good.
Yeah.
And there's an opportunity because it's an action item that will be discussed, so we can
Yeah.
rehash some of the conversations at that point. So
Oh, thank you.
Just also, I have a letter from Heart of the Rockies Health Center, Salida Health Center, recommending what we're proposing also. So I'll pass that around.
interesting. Okay, we need a break. We good? Keep powering through. Powering through. All right.
Can I make one more just district comment?
Yes.
Mr. Waddell's not with us. He went home, but he did officially retire. That's in your board packets, and you're taking action on that here in a second. And I'm sure there'll be a lot more to say about it. I just don't want to bypass somebody who gave their life and faithfully. We had a few other retirements, people who have spent 30 years or decades with us serving our kids that came in today. I'm not sure if they'll be in this board packet or if they'll be a next board packet, but we're always super grateful to the people like Mr. Waddell and others who give us their whole life, their whole career to loving our kids, and just want to lift that up and say thanks. And we're excited about those transitions for those people as they go on to the next thing that they need to. So.
Okay. Moving into consent agenda, looking for a motion to approve consent agenda.
Who was that on there?
Jody,
Jody.
Jody and Jen.
Jen, I'll give you the token on there.
Questions, comments, needed clarifications? Okay, ready for a vote?
Dr. Breckenridge Pettit. Aye. Dr. Hill.
Aye.
Mr. Hawks.
Aye.
Mrs. Lundberg.
Aye.
Mrs. Pascal.
Aye.
Ms. Schiffman.
Aye.
And Mr. Smith.
Aye. Okay, moving into discussion items. Collaborative bargaining interest for 25-26. David, Aaron, take it away.
Sure, this is me. I'm actually, as I told the administrative team, I'm pretty excited about this year's kind of sitting down and problem solving. I think we've got some good people on the team as people are volunteering, and it's just important we have this conversation in a public manner. And so I wanted to bring it to you to get there. The interest that I understand us bringing forward, this is an opportunity for you guys to say, I'd like you to add this or consider this and maybe talk amongst yourselves. First off is how do we help pay for insurance premium increases? At the moment, we are looking at somewhere in the magnitude of a 24% increase to health insurance premiums to our people. At this time, like last year, and we have in the past years, the board has continually picked up those premium increases. This is probably going to be big enough that it causes some decision making. So we have an interest as a district to continue to give the very best benefits we can. I think that's one of the things, just a name that I would recommend that we go into the room with. When we do a market analysis, we do that every other year. We look at 6 districts bigger than us, 6 districts smaller than us. We include BV because 90% of revenue for school districts is based on size, how many students you have. So you look at the same districts with the same revenue streams. That includes districts like Aspen and Manitou, as well as other districts, right? So it is a very good thing. It looks at other districts that are in mountain resort communities. So it's pretty good. When we look at our classified staff, we're in a very good shape. In many places, we're paying over 20% more than districts our size to classified staff. When we look, we made changes at Christmas to step and levels for classified. Made changes to certified steps, increased that. We also gave more experience for some of our veterans who transferred in to help us continue to attract new people. Those yielded good benefits. The main group that's still behind when we look at the others would be teachers, and I think we can dial in. So my recommendation is, or interest to go in and say, how can we get more money to the teacher, whether that's base salary. They may have other ways to spend that, but I think we have a strong interest in just focusing in on teacher pay and seeing what we can do with any new revenues that we'll have. So those would be the 2 big financial things. I do not have from my knowledge, any other big financial asks that I know of. So I'm going to pause there before we get into policy. But from the compensation side, I think we got a pretty clear set of interests to see if we can really do better for teachers and whatever money we have. Anybody want to talk about that?
I'm wondering if CBT, if teachers would rather have monies that we have put in base pay or insurance premiums.
Okay, appreciate that. And it may be both and a little of this and a little of that.
Right. Whatever
I think
their
that'll be a
guidance
really
is,
good
yeah.
conversation that I'm expecting. Anyone else on the compensation side?
I was just trying to find it, but I couldn't. The information from Tracy at Colorado School of Finance,
Yes.
I thought was super helpful, and it shows we're still behind state average in
Mhm.
teacher pay pretty substantially. Looks like we're starting to close the gap
Mhm.
and make that up, so that's super encouraging. But we do need to continually lean into that space as much as we can, because I think the numbers were the average teacher pay was somewhere around 63. I'm kind of recalling from memory again, but then ours was 53, so we're about 10,000 behind, is my recollection.
And my question would be, do we have a number about what 24% increase would look like?
Aaron, you want to take a shot at that one? Okay.
Yeah, I'd be curious, Matt, with just kind of that data set that came out, like how all encompassing is it? Do they have a bigger base but pay their premiums? Always just curious of those components.
Yeah, and I guess I'm going in a different direction. Sorry, but in terms of the payments on there it is, health insurance, when we're doing market analysis,
Yeah.
how many districts are paying 100% of kind of,
And I can't answer that. We do not, because it's so hard. You get into such
Right there.
hard to make apples and apples comparisons. We do really well by what we do for staff. But I also haven't done a deep dive, so I wouldn't want to speak publicly and make a guess that's incorrect.
Also, is that, I mean, I haven't read the report yet, but is that like comparable districts to us? Is that what?
No, that'd
the
be
numbers you
statewide.
have?
So
Or
I
is
asked
it-
Aaron, we came out yesterday, Colorado School Finance Project gave us kind of a profile of the state versus Salida. So you're going to mix in Boulder Valley and you're going to mix in La Junta, and you're going to put the whole mix together to get that aggregate data of that piece. And I think when we come into it, I think though I'd still recommend, I think teacher salary, and I would say base pay is kind of where I'd initiate it, but other people may have other ways to spend the money and make it more beneficial. But I think that's where we need to spend our energy
Yeah.
for any
and
money
it's-
that we're not putting into new staffing or anything like that.
And
we need to
it's
consider it.
definitely helpful to know statewide versus comparable districts, obviously.
Yep. And so I think we can get you both those pictures as we get into it. But we just got that yesterday, and I know we haven't really analyzed to tear it apart and do really good sense making. There's also where our rate of change has been much higher than the rest of the average of the state. We've been more aggressive with making changes in the last 5 years. And we're about approximately 42,500 for your very, very basic starting point. I'd love to see us get to 45 and keep on chasing a $50,000 base. That'd be what interest I would recommend, depending on the monies, right? Depending on student count, depending on lots of things.
This is really quick proof,
Right.
not based on perfect numbers, but you're probably talking right around
300,000 for a 24% increase.
Yeah, I would say my three interests, and maybe one of them is not necessarily the interests for collaborative bargaining, but be as we talk about kind of some of the restructure with Will's official retirement and what admin staffing we need to kind of take the next step.
Okay.
We talked about curriculum advisors and teachers and coaches and all those things. Just there may be the additional need for more admin, which I know I'm gonna get gutted for saying that, but that's okay. But that component, I always struggled with insurance because if you're an individual, like you get your full premium paid. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're on a family plan, you're getting that same dollar amount versus like the percentage.
Correct.
So if we went to a system where they are paying their premium, I would be more in favor of everybody's paying 20% of their premium, and it's not that inequitable for an individual versus singles or spouse or family coverage. And then the last thing would just be to echo what everybody has said. Yes, like follow the financial plan, put as much in the base salaries for all staff that we can.
Okay. Anyone else on compensation? That'll move us into policy.
I
Yes,
have
Ben.
I have a question on the insurance. Are there different deductible levels that the teachers can pay that influence how much it costs?
The way we have our design program, there's kind of two options. Most people, almost, I think everyone now chooses what we would call a high deductible plan. And then we're unique where the board's been able to set aside some monies and there's a health reimbursement account. Basically, the district helped pick up the high deductible. So, Aaron, correct me if I say this poorly, but it's a $6,000 deductible.
That's poorly.
What's that?
That's poorly. It's a $5,000.
Aaron, please answer the question correctly.
Yeah, no problem. Before you get carried away. Sorry, that was rude.
No, that's funny.
Yeah, no, it's a $5,000 max out of pocket for individuals, and the deductible max out of pocket match, and then we cover $3,000 of that with an HRA. So you basically pay the first $2,000, and then we cover the next $3,000. So for an individual, it's basically a $2,000 deductible, but we're already on a high deductible plan, and we're on the plan that's the highest deductible that we can get. We're shopping it. I'll tell you that. When they called me with this rate, I said that's 50% over 3 years. We're shopping. The problem is our usage is crazy high. And so even this year, there's a lot of companies that are like, you're smart to shop. You should wait until some of your big claims start to come off over the next year. So I think we're going to have a big bill no matter what in terms of going up. But we did take it. We changed the deductible last year, and we actually picked up another $1,000 because we did have a $4,000 max out of pocket, and we covered $2,000. We changed the deductible of $5,000 with the HRA picking up the extra $1,000 this year. That's been working. We've got about 18 months left in the HRA. Usually, we get a big chunk of different insurance premiums or different insurance, basically paybacks, and for having really good premiums on like Pinnacle, for example, and that money rolls into the HRA. So usually it self-sustains it, but we haven't seen those yet this year. So we have about 18 months that we can guarantee you that that's going to last.
Okay, so can I just have a little recap? So if you're on the district's health plan and you're, for example, one person, the district pays 100% of the monthly premium.
For health, vision, dental, and life, yes.
And life.
Life's mandatory with
glorious.
CBT.
Okay, and then the deductible is the same for everyone?
Yep.
Which is what?
It's a $5,000 max out of pocket
And that's
and deductible.
so we're calling that high?
That's considered a high deductible plan, yeah.
Okay. Great. And then
But there's
that
but
sounds
the individual
glorious.
employee's
Sure.
risk is 2,000.
And the way,
Okay. And so they pay the first 2,000 and then the district pays the rest of the high deductible.
and it's done without the way we run it. It's not.
Yeah,
The employee
you're not
never sees
involved
it.
in the
Yeah, the employee never
Yeah.
sees it, which is confusing for the employees because they read their 5,000, but unless you are educated and we try to continue educating them, you don't really understand that until all of a sudden you go over $2,000 and you never get another bill.
So some people maybe get that extra $3,000 benefit because they have more health care costs and some people don't.
Yes.
Or does everyone?
No, I mean, everybody has access to the benefit. It just depends on if you use it throughout the course of the year. Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be variable.
So it's not that it's an incentive after you hit the 2,000, but
No, you don't get cash. Like it's
No.
not like we're basically making the insurance plan better.
it's cutting down the out of pocket.
Yep.
Okay.
And I've had an HRA before.
Yeah.
It's just nice because you pay your deductible. Usually I paid my full deductible and then got a check back for whatever the max HRA.
But we don't do that.
No, it's done in billing. We're able to manage it in billing. So
So it's use or lose kind of.
no, just it's the only way you could sustain it because your percentage probabilities are most people aren't going to need that 5,000,
Yeah.
right? And so, or the 3,000, the second, third, or half of it, it's not the high common thing, and so your HRA can be self-sustaining and continue to keep that risk low for all the staff, and for the few people who need it, who have a really difficult year, then
Yeah.
right,
Use the benefit.
we're there. So that's kind of how we've designed the system.
Cool.
I know enough about insurance to be dangerous.
Okay.
Are there other like plan options, lack of a better term, that we should explore where we don't have an HRA, but maybe we convert to HSA, which we can contribute some to, but the employee contributes mostly to their.
When we shop, we look at those and we'll look at them again.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we're in the midst of shopping because one of the things you're in a trust right now with CEBT. So in theory, you're getting the benefits of the trust, them being able to go out and negotiate rates. The problem to that is the last 3 years we've been at the highest rate that the trust increases because the trust takes you as a population, your district, and says, okay, you're at this usage rate, which is the highest of everyone in the trust, and the max the trust is letting everyone go up is by 24% this year, so you're getting that bill. Last year it was 17, the year before that it was 11, and we've been the highest every single year of that trust. And so that's good, except for if you're a small district and you're at a high usage and you're at the farthest end of the trust, you're not actually getting any of the benefit of the trust at that point. You're actually getting the negative impacts of the trust in some instances. So we're shopping that to try to figure out, can we do an individual plan that would be more effective? The problem is all of our data shows that we're really expensive right now, whether that's for a variety of reasons. But
Right, some lovely things like babies, and then some sad things like cancer.
yeah, and also, we live in a rural community where coverage is high.
Yeah.
Cost of coverage is high, and so that's another thing that's constantly working through our.
We're meeting with our local hospital to talk about billing. We're going to explore everything. But from a CBT, just because I know it's getting late, I want to keep this moving. That's our interest, right? You got health insurance. That's going to be a big thing. How do we support our staff and compensation and get the best solution? And how do you balance that also with, I think, teacher pay is the area I think I'd really recommend us to continue to invest in. You did it again in January, and we do it again, and I think do it again. I think that's the one area that's got an area for growth.
It's also, I think, a good time to remember that we have a lot of really wonderful hidden benefits that are not in that base pay.
Yes.
Covering the next $3,000 for the deductible, 75% off your daycare for your children at the early childhood center, the great protections that we get for those serious medical issues, etc.
But again, that's not for all, right? Not everybody has a child at the early child care center or uses their deductible.
Right.
So
Right. But
where
it
a
does
pay
set
would.
Right. Not everyone uses those every single year, but we retained a leader because of the early childhood center,
Right.
etc. You're not going to have cancer every year in your early childhood center, but there's a lot of really nice benefits and care that we give everybody.
It's a nice package. So let's move. So policy would be the other area. You've got those, we've kind of referred to them as the blue policies because we had them color coded last year. Those policies we did not finish. Those will be up on the docket. I see no reason why those won't be addressed and moved through. I feel pretty confident about that. One of those that is left out there is that sabbatical. And so if you have strong and firm opinions, you can of that space, then we can make those things known. So those are some of them. And our lawyer is really recommending we look at some of just our professionalism policy. Our lawyer is recommending high, so I'm going to be taking the lawyer's recommendations back to that team. But there aren't too many other policies. There'll be some small tweaks and changes around our PTO. We're like, oh, that phrase isn't as clear as we need to. We'll be making some recommendations around some of those pieces, but definitely seems like PTO was a big success from the initial data. So we're excited about that, and it's been well received and being managed successfully. So lots to celebrate. But when I look at a policy, I think cleaning up some of the kind of ragged edges we weren't able to finish up last season. And I think I don't have any suspicion or concern that we won't be able to finish them up. And so I think we'll be able to do that piece. Sabbatical might be the only one that's obviously had a lot of conversation around it. So if you want to, is there any other policies you want to be concerned?
With the professionalism policies, is that where we would put something regarding staff use of cell phones?
That's where we're considering, or I'm going to be considering to put, for instance, if we're saying staff can't have or students can't have cell phones, we need to say something that says staff, if you're supervising students, unless it is a emergency or work related, I mean, there's some clear exceptions, then you shouldn't be on your phone if you're supervising kids. So.
And currently with how sabbatical stands, because I just haven't read it for like a year, was it that they were requesting it to be paid still?
Yes, they were still requesting it. I need to go back and read it, Mandy, because
I think that's kind of maybe just a pertinent piece to throw into the health insurance premium and base pay is paying for sabbaticals might not be as high of a priority anymore.
Okay, that's good to know.
I'm just saying, like, looking at a paid sabbatical policy, like if we're looking at a 25% increase in premiums and wanting to increase base pay, maybe paying for sabbaticals is becoming a lower priority.
It's a great thought to put that into the conversation. Appreciate that. Is there any other policy you guys like, hey, we really need to look at this piece? I think we did a lot of deep, hard work, and I think it's paying off.
Yeah, I would say my stance on sabbaticals hasn't changed. I don't think we should offer it, and if we do, I don't think it should be paid. And then keep it out of the boardroom.
Okay.
So.
All right. Is there anything else that's negotiated policy that you guys want to make sure that I address with the bargaining team, or anything around compensation? Those will be the two areas that they speak to. It is a week and a half away, and that's the training. And then the next week we kind of start into interest, and then it's not until April we get a little more into the deeper, like compensation. So there's time, because there's so many variables right now. We don't even have a good guess on the state budget, which is around $1 billion shortfall as it's currently drafted. There's just a lot of pieces and parts. So we're going to be working on policy on the front, just 4 meetings. I don't expect us to need more than 4 meetings, assuming the budget from the state and all that stuff comes in an orderly manner that's understandable and lets us all make commitments. I don't have any reason to suspect we will need more than the 4 meetings, which I know is a strong value of many board members to limit those conversations.
You have a full team?
There's 1 or 2 spots we're still trying to fill, but we're getting there. Yeah. A lot of new faces, and some of the same will be still there. So I think it should be a good cross section of sites and people from different working classifications be able to represent. I think it's going to be a good representative team. And I'm meeting regularly with SEA. We meet about once a month, just talking to things, trying to make sure have a good pace and there's no surprises as we head into those conversations. It's not the only thing we talk about, but that'll be in the mix as well.
Okay, we'll move into the next discussion item, board policy management platform. Yeah, you, Kim?
This is probably me, Kim and I, because what we've recommended, we're finishing up our audit of comprehensive. I will be doing I&J with Karen, and you should expect that in your February board report, some first reading kind of stuff from that last 2 books of audits. That's the hope. With that being said, where do we want to publish it? How do we want to manage it? There's some companies like Board Docs. There's some other ones. I think my key question here, it's not a big conversation. Am I being asked to go bring back bids, or do you want me to not go down that road and just stay with the status quo? Like, that's kind of the question we needed to publicly make sure we talk through.
I really enjoyed the projects for keeping things in a little nicer, more accessible. I support that personally.
Yeah. To me, the price point seemed pretty minimal for board docs. It was like $5,000. forget. And
Isn't that range? We don't have a bid, so.
and then the amount we're going to save in terms of Kim's time and freeing up that, and additional features that it brings in terms of communication with the public, which is always a strong priority. To me, it's kind of a no-brainer that we should be moving in that direction. I mean, if there's other options out there and you guys want to explore and bring those back, that'd be great. But I haven't seen any. But
Okay.
maybe there are.
Well, and I mean, I think like you mentioned, the public involvement. Like, I think one of the best things about his presentation was that people can opt in to have the agendas emailed to them every month, and then they can be more informed. Because clearly tonight, when there was a topic that people were invested in, we had a lot of people show up. So if people are more aware of seeing agendas and what we're talking about, then we might have more community engagement of people showing up when they see things on the agenda.
And I really liked the ease of finding policies, and it was just very well organized.
Just want to make
So-
sure we had that, some conversation at the Colorado Association of School Boards Conference, and I just want to make sure there's some public moment to make sure that's processed. What I hear pretty clearly is we should go ahead and pursue getting some bids and what that would look like so we can unpack that and bring that back to you. That'd be February or March. So I don't think I need any more guidance unless someone wants to add something.
You feel that's implementation, onboard usage beginning next school year?
Let me go,
Transition
give me
sometime?
30, 60 days and I'll come back and answer those questions.
Okay. Now we need a break, I'm told. So
I've been turning the heat up. I'm gonna check it one
take
more time.
5 to 10 minute break.
Mike's.
Welcome back. Moving into action items. Looking for a motion to approve action item A, approve on second reading policies. All we have is the stipend policy.
So moved.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben. Questions, comments, further discussion?
I guess I don't really know what my comments should be about it. I feel like hearing Jesse talk about the esports program and being in a pilot, but then that policy says like you have to have the 3 years before you're paid and you have to have a minimum of 10 students. So I guess I'm just confused. Where is the pilot that they're doing with esports outside of our policy? And if so, do we need to have some sort of bridge policy where, like, I don't believe the teacher doing the esports shouldn't be getting paid, but per that policy, it seems as if you have to have a 3-year period before they would get paid, and you have to have 10 students. So my concern is just like what we're doing with that pilot is not matching our policy.
We're trying to make it match the policy.
Okay.
So they're jumping there, and I'm saying, no, you got policy. You need to stay within this.
Okay, so you are aware. So
Yep.
you have already discussed.
So we're trying
that.
to stay within that, and the board would have to say, oh, we're going to accelerate this or that. Because if you don't, it'll backfire. It'll open up a can of worms that we don't want to, because somebody else have a passion point that may not support kids who don't have something right now, may do more of what they talked about, where it's stealing from a current program, but it's their passion point. So I think we're looking for consistency.
So, I mean, what is our thought process then on how you pilot something where you're very unlikely to have more than 10 kids if you're just starting this out?
I think what way we set it up was, so someone just doesn't get a whim and a passion for that year. They have to have the structures of those, boards and the extra volunteers. I mean, I don't think we'll have a problem having 10 kids on that.
Yeah,
thing.
I wouldn't think so either.
I think it'll meet a niche, excuse me. But you got to give it some leeway, some testing to make sure it's not one person shows up, oh, I'll do this. And then we put all this infrastructure in place, and then that person disappears and it all disappears with them. So I think it's still the right policy, and I think that's what we're going to try and follow with esports. In addition, trying to use Title IX surveys, and also trying to really dig deeper in that policy to say, what else do we need? It was mentioned with the student group, at least one place you guys reported out that maybe we need some other activities available for females. So that I think will also be added in the mix and should go through that policy. And if the board says, no, we want to push this faster, then it's got to come to the board, and the board's going to have to say, we want to do some exception here. We want to make it happen.
And then not the policy itself, but the regulation policy. Is that where all the amounts sit?
Yeah, and that's the part I think we need to come back in. You're talking about coaching pay in that sense.
Yeah, like all the various stipends.
Yeah, because you got CHASA, which is its own thing. You've got these couple, and then you got like supervising students. That's a stipend. Like trying to take care of Ascent kids. It's like its own academic programming thing. And then you've got, we want to have a mountain bike team, right? It's not in CHASA. So it gets its own kind of thing. So we've got to go back. It's one of the things. I don't know if it'll be this spring, but definitely in the next 12 months, you're going to see some recommendations where we need to probably up those amounts.
I don't want to add that to the CBT interest because it's not negotiated, but like their feedback regarding stipends would be, like, would we have more staff coaching if we had better pay? Or is that not the issue?
I'll probably try and ask a lot of different of our input things from the faculty group, like student academic or superintendent's academic council, CBT, SEA. I'll see if I can get any feedback that helps us have a broader perspective on that space. But we want to get GBCB cleaned up. This is part of what came out in the fall, program evaluation, those kind of things. And then regulation policy would come after that.
So with the GBCB as it is, like there's no red lines or anything on it. So have we made any changes?
I'm
that
not
what
looking
we're-
at the board packet right now. I can make sure we're for third reading and we got it 100% right.
I'm just trying to figure out what we've actually.
It should be the last section there.
There was
I
a
thought
lot of
the last
crossed out. I
paragraph
didn't
was-
see it redlined, but it
Oh,
was,
there is the last paragraph that's just
Yeah.
crossed out.
It's totally right.
Because that goes more to the regulation stuff, trying to
Okay.
Okay.
I see.
see it.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions about that one?
okay. Ready for a vote?
Ready? Dr. Breckenridge Pettit. Aye. Dr. Hill.
Aye.
Mr. Hart.
Aye.
Mrs. Lumberg.
Aye.
Mrs. Haskell.
Aye.
Ms. Schiffman.
Aye.
And Mr. Smith.
Okay. Looking for a motion to approve on first reading policy JICJ, student use of cell phones.
Oh,
Matt?
second.
Thank you, Mandy. Going down in history.
I would just add to it before you guys get into discussion on that position paper. There's a first draft. Appreciated Matt linked in today on that position paper. Here's the link to ours. I think for second reading, that's where we got some. That's where the robust conversation needs to be. Jen, if I remember right, you kind of volunteered to help steamroll that. So I don't know if there's any feedback or anything at this point, but we would hope then and to bring something back in February, because I don't hear anything from the community that says slow down. I don't know if anybody heard something different.
It's already pretty slow. Do you think, as for the policy, just procedurally,
Mm-hmm.
so we have the new policy that you're working from D11. Can we just get rid of our policy
Yeah.
and have the new one? We don't have to like draw a bunch of red lines and write it all again. Okay, thanks, Dave.
Yep.
Just when I was trying to compare those and see what it would look like.
We'll just have one.
I mean,
Thank
one
you.
other question Jen and I were kind of going through too is we have these position papers, which kind of give our why behind the policy.
Yep.
Is there a reason why that wouldn't just be the beginning of the policy so that it's a little bit more teeth in it? Like, part of me feels like these position papers are sort of like, I mean, they don't mean anything. Like, they're not a policy, they can't be enforced. It's just our opinion about something.
Mhm.
And the next board could just go on the website and wipe them all off.
Mhm.
Whereas if it's a policy, then there has to be discussion and a process to do away with it. So is there a reason why you wouldn't want all that overview just in the policy as opposed to just position paper?
You asking? I'm going to answer as a superintendent. I'm going to answer as a dad.
Okay.
The superintendent is so helpful when you're trying to lead a system to have clarity, not just in policy. And you could put those first paragraphs of the why in there. That's common in a policy. But to also have the place of, here's the research, here's the people to contact, here's the other policies. You can put that on a policy and encapsulate it. So it is super helpful though. Sometimes there's not a policy. Like we were looking at, discipline data kind of as part of what we were looking at this month, and to say, here's toxic stress, here's healthy stress, and the board to take a position. You can make a policy out of that, or you can just make the public aware. And I think it's super helpful. As a dad, a kid, and with my fourth kid through the system, I would love a public system that stated more clearly the whole robust position on key topics that deal with, particularly in things like human development, where more family values can be conflicting in a governmental system that we have to run. It makes me so happy as a superintendent to be able to talk about it, and then to also point parents or other community members, why don't you look at this? It's more robust. That's why I'm excited about it. And what you said is also true. You could go either direction, but
I appreciate it from like a public information, outward communication standpoint, and that it, to me, it can be. I don't think there's much legal jargon in the policy for this one, but it can be. Well, this is like, yes, the why and everything else, and then here's the policy. Yeah, a future board could wipe it all out or whatever, but I think with some of the SEL stuff and the outward communications we're working on, I think it'd just be helpful to have a point place to say, here's where it is, the data's links for like other research. But I don't disagree that putting some of those initial comments in the policies is like a bad idea.
Mandy, 1/3 of my table asked for just that you're suggesting, putting that position paper before the policy. So it was interesting from a community standpoint.
As in the policy or just before the policy? Included in the policy though? And I do think this is a policy that's uncommon in some manner, right? This wouldn't really apply to many of our policies. And so whether it's in it or before it like this, I think with a big change and some strong opinions, it is nice to be able to point to some document, either in or separate from the policy, saying this is how the board kind of feels.
So 6 to a half dozen. If you keep the context, which is what the position paper is out of it, then your policy has more long-term sustainability. The more you embed current, like this right now is something from the youth mental health crisis and U.S. Surgeon General. Like if you put that in there, like you're kind of dating your policy instantaneously. Yeah. That's another thing to think about.
And I was reading through the old policy, like, wow, it just keeps going and we're not doing it. So maybe it'd be nice to just have a short one that just says, this is the policy. Enjoy.
I will say one of the other components of my student table was, I feel like the distraction of text messages via a watch is still going to be persistent. So not sure if just the phones would be problematic. Like they felt like getting rid of it all may be the best solution.
We did have students mention how hard it is to get back on track, or how challenging it can be to get back on track when they just look at anything on their phone. I'm not sure they were specific with what it was, but just that it does take some time.
Yeah, and I made some comments to the policy that I think it should include all technology devices. And both the policies that I linked to, the District 11 one policy and the Boulder Valley School District, they're across all devices. They're not just cell phones. I tried to look up Aspen's, but I couldn't find it. But if you're trying to limit distractions, which is really what we're talking about, whether it's becoming from social media or something else, it's the if you're getting pinged on your wrist, it's going to take you 5-10 minutes, maybe more, once that happens to refocus.
When I did ask Abigail Cooksey about AirPods, because I was wondering, and also asking my kids, because they do use them in class, right? They're compatible with their Chromebooks. So when they're watching videos or doing things online in class, they are using them. So it's hard to know how deep we want to dive into the policy, how specific we want to be with enforcement. Like, do we need to say at the high school because they're used here, but then when you're outside, please don't use the, like there's a lot to consider.
And I suggested some language just to address that issue as well in the policy, that there needs to be some exception, I think, for like the issue the broadcasting teacher brought up. It's like, well, we use these until there's a technology solution, and there may be a class where a teacher says, I want to use cell phones for this, and that needs to be in the policy, just like your earbuds.
Yeah.
Like, well, we're going to use earbuds.
And I think it does need to be school specific and class specific and approved by administration, because I feel that most teachers currently feel that it is appropriate to give students a break and let them be on their phones. And I certainly strongly disagree with that. But I see your point about a specific class, but it's a slippery slope for me. And what about the kids in the class that don't have the phones? I don't know how it works for them, but again, I don't know.
Well, and even in terms of watching the videos and needing the AirPods, like I would think with this, we have the opportunity to move to just a different model in general, where the teacher puts video on the screen and we're all watching it together and then talking about it. Like, why are we watching it on our own Chromebook? Like, so I feel like if we're looking at things like that, then yeah, do they really need AirPods? You know, I mean, my kids will come to the table sometimes and I can tell immediately because they're just a little disengaged from dinner. Like, do you have your AirPods in? Take them out. So, but a teacher can't monitor 30 kids in a classroom. So if we just say you can't have them, I mean, my table was pretty specific that they felt like all technology, AirPods, watches, all of it needed to be gone, and making the comment that now the watches aren't distracting, but they feel like if kids don't have their phone, the watches will become a bigger deal because they will start texting more on their watches and they will start being more engaged, which is likely true.
Right, and there is the equality issue, and not everybody can afford a smartwatch or has one. And I just think I truly believe that as states and nations make these rules and we all move forward with this, the companies are going to come out with something to bypass it or something to sell to families and students, which will be different. So it's a whole nother, just same, yeah, but a different device that do we make a list or do we just have a blanket all
I mean,
technology?
I don't support the watch situation. Obviously, I think that's a lot of enforcement, a lot of asking kids to push their sleeves up. I don't know, like personal opinion. I don't know. Turn off the notifications. If we hear it ping, I don't know. Although mine does vibrate. But I would be interested to hear what administration and what teachers think about that. Like, are we telling everyone to pull up their sleeves? Are we asking if they have the internet? Is it just a dumb watch that looks like a smart watch? I don't know.
Yeah, and I would say my thought after hearing the kind of conversation and timeline is like, if we said we're not ready for second reading until March, does that
It's
cause
fine.
issue? Because I think we might need a little bit more time. We have like the implementation timeline of starting it in the next school year, so I don't know what we need more time for exactly. Because like it's great to get community feedback, but it's pretty loud and clear.
Well, and I think we also need to hear from students more so than just the few that we had today.
What would you want to know from students?
Not an opinion whether we should do it or not, just how they feel. Just give them a voice. They haven't had that opportunity, and this is affecting them. This is a huge part of their lives, and they have to make some pretty serious adjustments. So I think the more, like, it's awesome, like what you guys said, to take this back. I think, Mandy, you told them, the 3 that were with us felt very strongly that we do ban everything, and they were very positive about it. They felt strongly about it. So Mandy said, go back and talk to your friends about this. So if we start these conversations, I think it'll make that transition easier. So it may be, another meeting or more conversation, but I think they need a voice in this. It's a huge part of their,
It's hard,
especially high schoolers.
I worry that no matter what they say, there's not a planet where I change my mind.
No, and that's what I said.
So I don't want to be
Also,
no, because it's not their
pacifying them or great, you can tell me everything you want, and then you can write a book called The Anxious Generation that's better than The Anxious Generation and tells me why we can have phones and let me know in 5 years. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing they can.
But I think if we frame it in a sense that we're not going to change it because you don't want it. We're going to do this, but give them a voice as to how.
I think there's ways, and I think that's why counselors are going to be talking here this next month around what would the communication cycle, including explaining things to kids, engaging them. What does that need to be? I think we need that. Let me just throw out a problem, just some process, not product, but
hold on just a second.
yes, ma'am.
I just had a Karen question. Could that be us sitting with the student council when they have a student council meeting? Because they represent the student body. Could that be a Survey Monkey survey?
Yeah, I don't have an answer to how. I just think we should give them. I don't know. I think it was important. The kids that were here today, it meant a lot to them to be able to share.
Good. I think we definitely, there's multiple levels. There's some asking, some listening, and there's also some explaining and engaging, particularly when you get into the how. The how's the tricky part on this one, I think. I'm just looking at Jen because she's kind of the volunteer, and obviously I think another board member helping is great. But what if next month in the board meeting there's a discussion, and I'm imagining bringing back 2 different policies, and you can look at the pros and cons kind of side by side, fleshing out kind of this strategy that's an initial one we have laid out, and maybe fleshing out one that's more aggressive on the breadth of technology that we're trying to say no to, because then it'd have to have and this is how we're going to say no to these things, right? That's going to be the tricky part, like how are you going to manage it? How are you going to implement it? And if we could bring that back, have a discussion side by side, that's what I would need as a thinker to be able to evaluate it. And then we could.
And what can our process be? Because I don't feel like normally when we write a policy, are we looking for as much engagement maybe from staff who is dealing with this? Like I would want to hear, like, how do they feel about banning these things versus this thing? And how does that look in their school? Because what I don't want to do is mess up in either direction and then we fail. Like we ban too much or we ban not enough. Right.
But if we could put it side by side, then you could float it towards staff and get feedback. You could look at it and kind of say, oh, I really want this. Now that I'm really evaluating it, it's not coming out the way I thought.
I don't love it side by side because I think it's just so much is the same. Like a policy that's well written. I trust you and Jen and whoever else and some of the work Matt's put into it already to like come up with a pretty robust policy that we can review, make some further edits to, get some further feedback on, to bring back, whatever time frame it is for second reading and then final third reading. I do think Mandy brought it up, but I don't know what data sets we can actually gather that's meaningful pre and post adoption. But I do think that there's some of that we should try to do to be able to review the policy in X number of years.
And I think we've already got a lot of that. I was talking to Jessica Benna. That's another thing. I've been looking to that wellness counselor team of who we already have in place. It's also discipline data. It's also looking. I mean, we have a lot of the indirect,
like even testing data, right? Like
yeah. And and talking to Mrs. Benna, it was, well, I think we can maybe just do some perception data. What are your hopes? And ask them pre and post. And because she's like, we're not going to get into a deep mental health evaluation. That's too much. But she's like, we could do some perception data, both on the staff side and the student side.
Well, not to interrupt, but I think it's important also to talk about intentions, because even if our test scores don't go up 1 iota and we just don't have kids on phones in school, that's fine with me. I mean, I don't support a cell phone ban because I want a higher test score. I mean, yes, it would be great, or it would be great if there were less mental health issues. But again, that's not my personal intention. It's the distraction, right? It's like, let's learn at school. So maybe we need to talk more about intentions.
And Jesse was at my table, so the median 4.5 hours, I heard from him, and he was like, the winner was 10 hours and 11 hours a day. So that's clearly a lot. I think I think the other piece, someone at my table and from the community group and some of the students kind of said the same thing of the educational pieces, we need to hear it from an outside source of the dangers of social media and why some of this is coming forward, and then even some of the components of just the distractions. I think some of that educational piece, I don't know if that's appropriate in the spring or if it's in the fall, kind of when the implementation happens, but that was pretty loud and clear from both kind of segments of, if we're doing this, we need to have education on why and the dangers, of social media and all those types of things. And then, the students were kind of I'd really love to know the why more than just you don't want us on our phones.
I have a book suggestion for them.
I mean, that's partly why I think we should stick with our current timeline of second reading next month, third reading in March, and then really have April and May to ideally, I mean, I think it would fall to Jessica and her team a lot at the high school and the counselors at the other schools of use advisory time, have a school assembly, like, and tell kids why we're doing this. But I also feel like we've all done a lot of research. We've read a lot of policies. We've read a lot of books. I'm not sure we need any more time to come up with more ideas. I think now what I would most like to see is I would like to see from each principal and team, like the actual implementation. Do they agree with us that just keeping it in a backpack, we take it, we see it, we take it, it goes to the office, a parent picks it up. Do they agree with that? Or do they think that's not going to work and they need something else? Like, I feel like we're at that stage where we need the people on the ground to tell us if we're on track.
I will say, as a father, I recognize it to an extent. I like light bulb hit me moment tonight was like how many students said like the social anxiety of hearing a text message and needing to respond is like such an issue. That to me was like, wow, it's not just social media and just
Yeah.
endlessly. It is like the
Distraction.
social stigma of I have to respond to my friend group or I'm a bad friend.
Who hopefully won't be texting them because they won't be on their phone.
Okay, I think I have some thoughts. What I'm going to shoot for, if I'm listening well, there's a variety, we're all on the same page, but we're not all in the same paragraph in terms of some of the nuances here. And this isn't a nuanced conversation. So, Jen and I don't know if somebody else wants to join us as that second board member, we'll shoot for a second reading. And then if we get into that second reading and it turns into discussion and we table it till March, we can do our process that way and try and look at that piece. I can be very clear with you on principal sides. As the initial draft is out, that's very doable, makes sense. I think it matches our learning from looking at other districts that just take it straight up first couple weeks and then it fades away. My middle school staff, speaking through Michelle Saab, and we really like to look at the distraction side, which is what I think you just articulated, Joe, of trying to reduce the distractions. That's more of having somebody with like the bags and trying to look at the watches, the more robust way to try and address that. They have an interest in not just the social media, but also the distraction aspect. And when I will push into that space and say, how and can you, that's when there's like, there's not a lot of solid, like we know how to tackle that more aggressive stance. Like who's at the door, checking devices and going through that piece. So it just brings up the management of it, right? But that's where it is. I think I got enough feedback to go ahead and do the next step.
In addition to, could you create a draft form for accommodations?
When I spoke to administration at high school, are you talking like kids who are allowed to wear headphones and
Like
test
if you have
for
an
medical
IEP
issues?
or if you are
Yeah,
diabetic,
I mean, the high
those-
school implied to me that that is already under control.
See that?
The high school implied to me that they've got that under control. They know which kids they're working with and that those are
So you don't. So
assumed.
that's not a parental form then that needs to happen.
We'll
I
have to
think
put language in the policy that says, here's how you get an exception. Here's the general exceptions that are allowable, and here's the pathway.
Okay.
And it'll point to
Yeah.
some sort of a regulation
Because I think those
policy.
are legal obligations.
Yeah.
Correct.
Like a text to speech, a kid who needs to do text to speech is an example of that.
English as a second language, medical, blah, blah,
There's
And then
blah.
sorry, you done?
So-
My question is, I'm sitting here thinking, is this a budget issue also in the sense that will we need another counselor? Like I'm hearing the students, I'm hearing us, the books we've read, the research we've done, like we're taking away an addiction for 8 hours a day. Do we have support for some of these students who it really might create more anxiety, more like it may be hard? I mean, obviously it will be hard for many, many students, but are we going to have support for those students who it's truly a anxiety issue?
I believe
Or-
so.
Okay.
And it's a question that I don't know that we can fully predict. From what I know and see, I think the answer is yes. Our students who have the least will be one of the profile kiddos that'll be hard because they may own very little, and you're into something where they have very little turf of their own and very little control.
And it
So-
may even be their friendship, their whole.
Right. But most of those kids are already getting high support from the faculty hire for that space. I think your budget constraints are going to be around if you want to be more, have a more robust thing, more robust policy that addresses the distractionary side. Then you are going to be looking at additional staff to probably implement that. There's an initial response, but I think let's draft policy. Let's look at it. Let's look at the unintended
Well,
consequences. Let's add deeper questions.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say too. So one of the ladies at our table, her sister teaches in D11, and they actually hired a lot of new staff at all of their buildings to essentially be cell phone police. Like they're the ones there in the morning helping check them all in. They're the ones that if a cell phone's in a classroom, they just call them and they come pick it up. So that's another reason why we really do have to have this done by March, is depending on our implementation, there are potential budget things that we need to consider. So not even just the mental health, but like logistical, do we need logistical staff depending on how we do this?
And then I would also technology is going to be one of those things where every board of education every year is going to have to say, do we have to take the next step? You're not going to resolve any technology interface with humanity and developing humans and get it. So your approach has to be, we got this shifted, let's shift. Like there's going to have to be a story where every board of education is, as we all come and go in these seats, goes, how is the interface, the cyborg storyline rolling out today, right? Because it is not going to stay put. And the pace of change with AI is going to rearrange so many things that have never been rearranged in human history. And that's the kind of magnitude we are in light of. There is a large conversation. So just to also say, we may take the right next step. You will never take the last step. So encourage yourselves of, okay, what can we see? What can we do? Take that step so that we can see the next one and take it. And I know all of us would like to get it right. To get it right will be the relationship and the conversation with our staff, our families, and our developing humans of this tension that we're walking out, because in order to make money and live independently, you must go deeper with technology. In order to grow into a healthy human, you must find independent, something internal to manage that. And that is the world our children are going to walk into. So it's not a once and done. So maybe let's have our first reading, leave it there. Let's take a shot. Let me bring some stuff back. And I'm excited because I think our community came and spoke, got clarity, and I think we can take the next step and continue to take the steps that our kids need as we look at these issues.
I would say my final comment would be, I saw some commentary about suspensions. I don't think that would be appropriate because then they're just going to go home and be on their phone during their suspension. But then also, you mentioned it a little bit with the technology. I know we're not always going to be there, but I know we're doing the best we can on constrained budgets and things, but it's always a little discouraging when it's like, oh, my Chromebook doesn't work, or it's slow, or this, that, the other. Another budgetary piece that may need to come into play depending on, maybe they don't need AirPods because we're going to be like the airplane and just you need some earbuds for today, so connect them to your device.
Yep.
Okay. Ready for a vote?
All right, Dr. Breckenridge Pettit. Dr. Hill. Mr. Hobbs. Mrs. Lumberg.
Aye.
Mrs. Paschal?
Aye.
Ms. Schiffman?
Aye.
And Mr. Smith?
Okay, moving down to approve the amended 24-25 budget and the associated appropriation resolution 2024-25-05. Excuse me. Looking for a motion.
So moved.
Good, thank you.
Second?
Good. David, Aaron, more details we need on this one? Any questions from the board?
I don't think there's necessarily more. Hopefully you found the video helpful as we walked through that. There wasn't huge changes in terms of quantity from what you saw last month. There was a couple big number changes. The tentative agreement went up a little bit. As I showed you, there was about $100,000 risk based upon appeals and things like that. We're still working through the appeals, but I budgeted them all in there as if they all were accurate because that's how quickly we had to move. So that's why you saw that go up by about 80,000. And then there was a revenue stream that I'm still a little unclear on the state. I actually think we're going to get more in state share than what they gave us in December. But just to give you context of the complication of the budget that we're working on, David mentioned we have $1 billion shortfall in the state budget next year. And so in November 1st, you get the governor's first budget for next year. And then late November, we get our mill levies for this year. And then we get our first run of that in December. Then I get a December run on the budget request for the governor for next year. And then in December, they also said, well, we're also trying to review the at-risk and ELL population. So you'll get another updated one for this year in January, which is still coming. But today I also got an update on the governor's budget request for next year again. So we're working on constantly these multiple budgets. I'm not concerned about that revenue stream. I budgeted it where the last number they gave me, but I actually think we're going to get more once they review our at-risk and ELL kids. Even if it doesn't come through, though, it's still within the tolerances that we built into the financial plan, and it goes back to the strategy where we're paying off some of our PTO balance out of one-time fund balance, which after the audit, you saw we have enough to do that in our fund balance, so I'm still not worried about it. I think it meets all the goals that you've had. I think that's the big stuff. I just want to be transparent because those are the changes from last year. So for the public, I think it's good to restate that maybe. But if you have any more questions, happy to go into more detail on any of that. The only other thing I would say is I think, Jody, you did ask a question via email about trying to read the tea leaves on rural and BS factor. And my answer going forward is until they put it in there, we're operating as if the rural money is now in the formula. We're expecting to get it. There is no BS factor attached to it. And we have $1 billion shortfall. so I don't know. We're never going to know until the moment they say, oh, we had to fix the budget and we had to take money out of schools. But for some positive note on that, the run that I got literally at 7:30 tonight, so it shows you CDE is working as we speak. The governor's budget request has us getting more money than his last budget request. So I don't know how that's functioning, but I don't have an answer to that tea leaf question, but I'm just continuing to operate off the dollars they give us until they tell us they're taking away. So that's where I'm at currently.
I heard the deficit was down to 750,000.
Million.
750,000?
Sorry.
Million. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Right. Woo!
Add some zeros. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's all right. You're a banker.
I'm a banker. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
No, I mean, I think they're updating that. I did actually see something that Tracy Rainey had sent out they had just updated that about a week ago as well. The point is that we have a lot of money that they're trying to figure out right now, and yet we keep getting more money in our formula. So I'm not sure how that's functioning. So in answer to that question, I'm operating off the numbers they give us until they tell us they're changing that number. But I think that's everything. If you have questions, happy to answer them.
One general budget question, and I think it kind of is erratic. Is there marijuana money still coming to the district from the taxes, and does the lack of a grow facility in Chaffey County make a difference to Salida School District? Because it's just state, right?
Yeah. Not that I know of. I don't see it anywhere in the formula, and then locally that would be in our property tax. The only way it could change, I mean, I guess if we had a grow facility and they were paying tax dollars on that, then that would increase our mill levy a little bit as well.
I think I just heard today about the METAB monies the county gets and how that will
Yeah, I
go
don't.
away. But,
Not that
so I
I'm
didn't know if it
familiar
would
with.
impact us.
I sit on that committee, and it has plummeted. But that does not. That's different from property tax. It's from the sales tax from
Right.
from our former production grow facility. It's going to impact our partners very, very much, like 10% of what we used to have.
Any other questions?
What's our current fund balance? You know,
Like current as of today or as of the last? Because
yeah, I mean, I know it fluctuates, but I'm just
Yeah.
trying to get a sense. Of
Yeah, I mean, the current fund balance at the end of the year total is like 5.2 million is our projected.
Okay.
But that includes unassigned and all of our Tabor and things like that, which is a decrease of 700,000. It was 5.810 last year.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's a poorly worded question.
It's a good question.
Ready?
Ready for a vote?
All right. Dr. Breckenridge Pettit.
Aye.
Dr. Hill. Mr. Hobbs. Mrs. Lumberg. Mrs. Pascal.
Aye.
Ms. Schiffman.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye. Looking for a motion to approve resolution 2024-25-06, authorizing the use of a portion of the beginning fund balance as authorized by Colorado statutes. Yeah,
Second.
Jody. Aaron, anything you want to add here?
No, I mean, this is just attached to this is that exact number that we're projecting a decrease. The only thing I would add that I've shared with all of you, and I guess again, I would want to be transparent. I never really think we're going to fully actualize that decrease. I think we always budget for all of our positions, and I try to do the best we can in a limited budget. But even now, we have a couple positions that are open, so most likely it won't be that big. We'll probably spend less of our fund balance than 670,000 by the end of the year. But I think you should always count on that being the case. Otherwise, we're budgeting poorly.
Okay, ready for a vote?
Ready? Dr. Breckenridge Pettit. Dr. Hill. Mr. Hobbs. Mrs. Lumberg. Mrs. Pascal.
Aye.
Ms. Schiffman. And Mr. Smith.
Okay, kudos. Let's wrap this thing up. Board Communications Committee reports. Mandy, anything for BOCES?
I just pulled up that agenda. We just had that meeting. There's not really much going on. We're reviewing policies, doing the executive director evaluation. Yeah, she's got a good strategic plan. I feel like we're definitely dialing in and focusing a lot on high quality education for SPED. So I'm impressed with Susan and what she's doing. So.
Beautiful. Facilities Committee. Karen? Joe? We're talking still about the quadplex. David, probably sometime this month we should fire off that email to the county since
The land use
they're
code
sworn
is-
in. Newbies are sworn in.
Okay. Copy.
Nothing else there for me. Communications, Jen,
Wait,
Matt.
hold on.
Oh,
Ben, do you have something?
No, I just turned my thing on.
He's just ready for it.
ready. Jen, Matt, Kim. Probably should have acknowledged in board member comments, but kudos to another great annual report.
Yeah,
Lots of good feedback. from
it
that.
arrived in my mailbox. Thank you.
Arrived
That's
and-
the exciting thing.
I made a comment last month and about just like continuing to fill out content, lack of a better word. As I was away, my wife yelled at me because she's like, I cannot find an email for anybody in the district, even though there says there's a directory. So just as we
Actually, this week, go to the main website, the directory is live.
so I know it's coming, but just continue to
Little bits and pieces.
it's coming to two people still listening.
Yeah.
Okay. Casby, Jen.
No, thank you.
DAC, Ben,
Nope. No meeting.
policy audit, nothing more.
No.
Good.
Nope.
Future business, biggest thing, Mandy sent out that email for David's evaluation, trying to get that done by February 1st, so she can file the data for the February board meeting. Whether or not we have a February 2nd board meeting, still TBD, but hope to wrap that up February, March, waiting on some data back from the survey results that we always wait for, and then have those conversations of David's contract again. So, and then everything else that we're working on. Nothing else much. There's nothing much going on. Next meeting, February 11th, here in the Crest, probably back
I think
upstairs.
we're probably back upstairs.
Okay.
Unless anyone has objection to that.
Anybody ready to volunteer for agenda review?
Jody.
Jody. As I said, special meetings, retreats. We talked about the 3rd, 4th-ish week of February. Don't know if that's still needed, but I can't remember exactly what we were going to use for that.
If you needed a second meeting in February, the two key topics would be, we really need to spend more time talking about, I think, the phone thing, right? Clearly we see tonight still, there's a lot of nuance there. So that could take some necessary meeting time. And then I think the other piece is kind of getting ourselves set up for budget season in terms of new positions and how that looks for redesigning and focusing on kind of academic issues, which I think is where I'm hearing kind of for the next season is to really, we get to go back, not so much operational stuff, but really dig into just curriculum instruction and pedagogy and what's the right structure of positions. There could be some robust dialogue that requires another meeting to have those two things so that I can keep going back and forth between different stakeholders and making that all come together. So that would be the two topics that are, it's kind of bubbling up for me right now that may require another meeting in February.
So just another Tuesday night.
You could do it a couple different ways, or a morning meeting. I don't see 8 hours unless somebody else tells me something different. I see you could do a morning meeting, maybe 8 to 12. I think you could get through most of anything you need to get through.
Can you call it a retreat if it's at night?
We violate the word retreat all the
As long
time.
as you
As long
say
as
it
you're
like this, you can call it whatever you
We can grind here and all those things. But those would be the two topics that may not be able to fit in the February meeting and the March meeting in and of themselves. This was a very late one. I really appreciate everyone giving a long night. I think I scheduled all these kind of talking sessions back in June and July, and I think it was worth our time. But I don't think we can be successful trying to do this 3 or 4 months in a row of going this late at night. That's not what we think is best normally. So it may require a second meeting to pull out those topics.
For the org structure stuff, there's probably a component in there of posting for Will's position and timing for that.
Yep. So Squidell, he's resigned or retired, a different word. And then we'll be bringing him back on for special projects next year in a real halftime setting to kind of highlight his strengths. And I'm recommending, and the admin team's in the same place, of replacing that position with another assistant superintendent. I'll be talking with like the academic council and talking to some other faculties and just listening so that I would imagine us putting out a press release that has announcement of him changing, as well as here's what we're looking for in the timeline.
Okay. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Boom. Thank you, Mandy.
10:20.
Mike's off. Good job,
Josh,
team.
you got us over there.
Thank you guys. Good night. That was some of the best